Behind every farm, winemaker, bottle, and grape lies an untold story. This is Behind the Bottle, a podcast by Cape Classics, a South African and French wine importer founded in 1992. We are committed to discovering and sharing these tales. Today's episode features the audio from our National Braai Day YouTube video, where Kanonkop's Abrie Beeslaar, Excelsior's Peter de Vet, and Raats Family Wines' Bruwer Raats joined our CEO Rob Bradshaw to chat about braai, South Africa's version of barbecue.
Hi, I am Rob Bradshaw. I'm with Cape Classics. We are the leading importer of fine South African wine into the United States. I am joined by some pretty special guests today. We have Peter de Vet from Excelsior Winery out in Robertson. We have Abrie Beeslaar from Kanonkop in Stellenbosch, and Bruwer Raats from Raats Family Wines, also in Stellenbosch. And you may expect that we're going to spend the next hour or so talking about the great wine these gentlemen produce. But we're actually going to bypass all of that and go down a new road called braai. And braai is an incredibly special word. And boy, it's a noun, it's a verb, it's a spirit, it's a religion in South Africa. It is ultimately the word you use to describe people coming together and cooking over a wood flame. So, you pronounce, it's spelled B-R-A-A-I. And there's a very special day coming up. There's actually a national holiday built around the concept of braai in South Africa. We're going to talk about it a little bit today with our friends. So I would love to start with just a really easy question, and maybe Brew, you can lead the way. But what does National Braai Day mean to you? Symbolically and in your family. This is a very real and special holiday, and I'm wondering if you could share what that means to you.
I think if you look at where braai came from, was pretty much the pioneers that sort of moved in ox wagons and oxen across South Africa, and as they were going along, they would hunt the wild animals, and then in the evening they would cook it, obviously open fire, because they were basically moving into sort of not at that stage any homes or roads or anything. It was as they go along. So that's where originally it came from. But what it become in the modern days, and it stems from that, is that when you say braai to someone, or when you invite someone to your house for a braai, it actually means getting together and barbecuing braai, something over a fire, and it becomes sort of a social event. So if you say you invite someone for braai, they know they can't dress up in a suit and tie. They must not dress up at all. It is social. That means you arrive in shorts, flip-flops, a T-shirt, and completely relaxed. So that's the first thing that comes up in your mind. It's going to be social and it's going to be relaxed. The second thing is that there's going to be interaction. Making the fire and people standing around, making the fire while it burned, not being even cooking meat, that's already where it starts. And it becomes a whole social thing. Cooking the meat or braaiing the meat on a fire, and we mostly use wood, either Western Cape, we use a lot of the old vineyard stumps that's been ripped out, but there's also some lovely hard coals available. I'm sure some of the other winemakers can elaborate on that. But, standing over that open fire, talking to each other, it becomes a real social event. So when you say braai, I invite you for a braai, it means a social event in a very relaxed environment and talking to each other. And of course, there have to be wine, or you have to drink something next to a braai. Nobody stands empty-handed. So braai has really become something social, and it's across all South Africans. Today, you'll find everybody braai. And that's why they've created this day, and it was quite recently where they created this holiday to bring South Africans together, that everybody does. And this is one thing that all South Africans across all the sectors do, and that is we all braai. And that's why they created almost a national unity for something common across all the lines that potentially could divide have now been joined together through Braai, and that's why we have National Braai Day.
To me, it's about family, it's about relaxation. Some of my earliest memories of spending time with families on a Sunday would be Braai. I mean, the nice thing about Braai, even for kids, it's very participatory. So it's not, mom cooking in the kitchen, bringing out a roast. We all get involved. I mean, we used to, from a young stage, we used to get bread dough and put it on a stick and cook the bread on the fire as part of the whole ritual. So it's very much a celebration of South African life, South African outdoor life, and it's a very long process. So you don't just arrive. It's normally 2-3 hours before you eat, and probably you've had quite a few glasses by the end of it. But on a broader scale for South Africa, what's wonderful is the different regions. We have various ways of braaiing. In the Western Cape, if you're on the coast, fish is often part of the menu. But as you head off inland, it's big sheep country, so lamb chops and things like that. And up in the north, it's more cattle country, so it's more beef. And they bring in, they make a pup, which is called polenta, which is like a polenta type of thing as a side. So it's an interesting element of South Africa that we've got these nice varieties depending on your region. So I think it's just a wonderful celebration of everything that's good about the country.
I'm laughing, Peter, because I feel like when I'm with you guys, like the actual Braai masters, I'm not sure it's so participatory. I feel like I'm always last in line. I can't. You guys are done, but I love it. I have learned an awful lot from all of you over the years. All right, cool. So here's my favorite part, right? Like, let's talk about menus a little bit. You guys braai often, and you have family events and business events, and customers are over, but I'd love to just spend a little time on what are your go-to braai menus? Like your can't miss, never go wrong. People love it every time. And maybe Abrie, you could kick this off. Like what are your go-to braai, your menu?
Rob, thank you. I think all of us as a favorite, but that's a great thing about braaiing. You can mix it up. And because we braai so much, we do mix it up the whole time, because you don't want to, just cook steak every night or just lamb chops. And I think Peter touched on it. South Africa, we're blessed with a lot of really high quality meat. Doesn't matter if it's lamb or beef or ostrich or game. You can really cook quality meat every night of the week. And but a menu would normally consist of course, protein and nothing. Sausage is like side food, to be honest. It's not something, you don't build your braai around something like that. So it must be like something, substance, like proper lamb chops or proper piece of steak or chicken. Chicken is, once you get tired through the week of red meat, you might start to look at chicken. And I think some people always feel quite impressed if you can grill a nice piece of fish on the but a proper menu would consist of at least for me out of red meat. And then I think you've had it a couple of times. South Africa is braai broodjie, which is like toasted cheese and tomato and onion and a bit of other stuff on as well, which is I think a South African favorite. And then with that, you'll have some salads, and everybody has their own type of preference to salads. Potato salad, I think, is always a South African favorite. You can see how we lean towards the starches.
So, Abrie, what is your can't miss? You need your braai to be perfect. Can't miss. What's your lead protein?
I would say, proper lamb must be must have substance. Must be of a proper size, and normally with that nice fat rind. But then your type of wood do give a specific taste as well.
Amazing. Brew, what are your thoughts on menu? What how do you look at it? What are your go-to dishes?
I think anybody real braaiing talent, master, will be judged on his braai broodjie, which is referred to as a cheese griller. And because the meat, obviously you have to be on it to braai it, but if you braai, a piece of bread with cheese, onion, tomato, chutney, in between, you can burn it so quickly. So you have to really be on it. So that's usually one thing. If you look at a good braai master, you look at his braai broodjies first. So I think those sort of the wors, the boerewors, the lamb, the braai broodjies, the pap, and the tomato smoor or sauce. That's all. But we also like yellowtail and Cape salmon. Is two fishes that we braai when they are in season. But you can't talk about braai and menus if you don't have wine with it.
Thank you, Brew. And we do this quite a bit here as an educational. We braai a lot as a company, and we spend an enormous amount of money on these thick tomahawk steaks, beautiful lamb chops, big pieces of fish. I mean, the best of the proteins. But I can tell you, every braai we've ever hosted, where people remember the next week or the next month or the next year, is the braai brokies. It's amazing. America is a grilled cheese culture, right? Like everybody grew up on grilled cheese, but almost no Americans have actually had a proper grilled cheese, like actually done the sandwich over a wood fire. And it is so simple, but it inspires people. Because, here you do it in the oven or in a pan. I mean, there's a million ways to do it, but no one thinks to actually light the grill and get some smoke on it and get some char. And it's the one food people go crazy for. They go crazy. You guys have done events with us. We can't make them fast enough. All right, Peter, I'm excited for your thoughts on the menu, because I will tell you, on every trip, when I'm like thinking about the braais and when we're going out to see you, there's this one thing I can't get enough of, and I only get it at your house. So what are your thoughts? Go to braai menus.
Well, Robert, I take it you're referring to skilpotjies. So that is definitely would be on my menu. I like to, because braai is such a long process, I like to have some snacks before the time while you're cooking. So a skilpotjie is good for that, because it's a fatty thing to cook. I'll explain what it is now. And it's the fat, it helps to line the stomach while you're drinking copious amounts of wine. So a skilpotjie is a South African invention, although apparently I've heard even in Roman times they actually made something quite similar. It's the caul fat of a sheep. So caul fat is the fat around the organs. It looks like a bit of a net when you take it apart, and then you mince. I like the minced lamb's liver. Some people have whole liver, but I'm not a big fan. So it's spiced with coriander seed and other spices, and they put it all together and then wrap it in a parcel of this caul fat. And the secret to braaiing it is you got to braai it quite long, so you got to render the fat, but you've got to keep the middle just slightly pink, so it's still lovely and juicy, and it's one of the most amazing things to eat. I've served it to people who categorically state they do not like liver, they do not eat it, and they come back and say that's of the most amazing things they've ever eaten. So I love to start with skilpotjies. I would probably agree with Abrie. I don't think you can get past good lamb chops, and I liked his suggestion on the thick cut. I think often when people cut lamb chops for the braai, they cut them too thin, so I specifically go to the butcher. I'd just like to add also that if you braai a chicken, that's regarded as cooking a vegetable in this country. So it's nice, but it's not the real thing. The normal and salads. I think coleslaw works wonderfully well. Just easy. The meat is the highlight of a braai. I have actually started recently braaiing quite a lot of vegetables, aubergines, butternut squash, that kind of thing works fantastic in the braai. Sweet potatoes.
All right. As we start talking about technique, right? You have not all been braai masters since birth, I presume. Would you be willing to share, what are some good hacks or tricks or just technique that you've honed over the years that have helped you be braai masters, that have really big steps forward that you've learned that have really upped your braai game? And I think, Abrie, this would be a good place to start with you.
I think, the older you get, it's for me, it's about interpretation of wood and what you're going to get. And you're just sticking your hand into the fire and actually understand. But I think when it comes to cooking food, you need to, when it comes to lamb and beef, you need to be on top of it when it comes to the heat and also your distance from the heat. I think that's quite important. Because you can't really, you have to be accurate on that to cook it properly. And that means, turning it the right amount of times. And also, you're not going to get away with too low coals when it comes to cooking. So I think that's also very important. But really true hacks is get proper wood. That's the first thing. Because you don't want to go pour drinks and come back and then the fire is dead. That you will look very like an amateur if that happens. So you get proper wood that will burn for a while, and then you must be able to set your grill at different heights. I think get yourself a proper grill that you can set at different heights depending on the heat of your fire. That's important. And if you have to really stretch it for a day, get yourself a black pot, like cast iron pot, because nobody knows what's going on inside, and you can get away with a lot of things.
Awesome, Abrie. Thank you so much. And I'm going to give everybody some visuals. So bear with me just for a second as I move the camera, but I think a lot of what you said is really key, and maybe we can put some visuals to it. But one, I think you need a great wood. We don't have vineyard stock around, so we often buy carbonized wood, so super premium restaurant quality hardwoods that are cooked in a high oxygen fire at about 1,000 degrees. And what you get out of that is these big, I'm going to get a little dirty now, but I don't know if you can see that, but you can get these big carbonized chunks that make for a hell of a braai. And then as we talk about heat, like this braai right here, you can see you can come right down to the coals here or move it up to here or here. So you can constantly be moving that grate up and down to make sure you get the heat you want while taking your coals down here and just moving it over. What you get is really complete control over your heat. All right, Brew, tell us some hacks. We need to learn from you masters. We need to, finish this thing being better at what we do. Do you have any hacks or lessons along the way you want to share?
I think that starting will definitely be the wood that you use. And that have two effects on it. Is if you use softer woods like vineyard stumps, it burns out quickly and it doesn't last very long, but it gives quite intense heat. So if you braai with that, you must usually be further away from the fire because it's quite warm, but it doesn't last long. Then if you use hard coal, cameel doer and camel thorn tree, a lot of it comes from Namibia as well. Then your fire takes quite some time before it actually burns out, but it gives you a very sort of equal heat over a long period of time. So as you pointed out in the braai, depends on the wood that you use and obviously what you want to braai. So that you to understand the wood that you use and how it produces the heat. Then what we also have, which didn't show, is a grit. Basically, two pieces of, it almost looks like the grit that you showed there, but it's folded on top of each other, and you can actually put everything inside, close it, and then you actually turn it by hand. I prefer to use that, especially if there's a lot of meat to braai. If you just do for a couple of people, you can turn them by hand. But if you cook for more than 6 people, I prefer to use the grit to turn. And then obviously you don't braai the wors and the chops you braai separate. And that's, I think, one thing you learn very quickly. Don't try to braai everything together. And then obviously you need a good, we usually use these stainless steel boulders with a lid on it, so that if you braai the one thing, you can keep it in there and just put it close to the fire to keep it warm. That's also important to have, maybe depending on how many things you braai, but not to mix the sausage with the wors, and keep all your different components separate as you braai them separate, and obviously not braaiing them together, because they all have different requirements in terms of heat, how quickly they cook, and how fast you can actually overdo them. And I think then the most important part for a braai is to have a nice social sort of attitude, that you really want to just relax, chat to your buddies, drink some nice wine, and just have a really social time. And that's I think that's the main component about braai, is just enjoying it socially with friends and family, and just having a really great time.
Yeah, Brew, thank you. The magic in what you're saying, and I've learned the hard way, you can't braai in a rush. Yeah. For me, maybe half the joy is the peacefulness of the process. And it took, I burned a lot of meat, because you're hustling and you're trying to do too much stuff, and you're pouring wine and talking to your guests. And man, the more you learn to slow down, have a glass of wine in your own hand, but don't go too far from the braai, be there, see it. Man, that's the beauty, right? Like, just going slow. You can't make it a job or a hustle or try to do too much. Better to pace things out, go slow. Always have some food coming off the grill. But for me, the magic happens in just the peacefulness of the process. If you're not enjoying it, it's not a braai, right? All right. Any mistake, guys? Any epic braai disasters that you're comfortable sharing on video forever? Peter, you want to lead the way with any braai disasters?
I think it's happened to every one of us, and probably multiple times, but that is running out of coals, where you've still got a bit to cook, and you've just got it, and especially if there's a bit of wind around, and you just can't get enough heat. It's a mistake a lot of people make. So it's either too much food or too little coals, or what, you just haven't planned well enough, and you end up having to finish it off in the oven or something like that. So that's the sort of standard mistake.
Now the best part, guys. The key thing we've yet to really talk about is what's in your glass. When you start, for me, when I come out on a Sunday, I might come out at 3:00 and the kids are doing their thing. Everyone's doing their thing. And for me, I'm going to light the braai, which takes some time. And I bring out a bottle of wine, and I got the opener in my glass. And I know for like the next 3 hours, I'm going to kind of be alone with my thoughts, with the braai, preparing something for the family later. But that choice, right? That choice of what's in your glass is a big part of this process. But what's in your glass, guys? How do you approach the wine for your braais? What do you love to sip on when you braai? Maybe Brew, you could lead the way.
We usually start with especially now when it's summer, we always start off with white wine. So we usually drink a nice South African Chenin Blanc. You can never go usually unwooded one. And then maybe we'll drink either a more fuller style Chenin or Chardonnay. And that sort of always sort of start everything off. And then when we actually start braaiing, we definitely move to red wine. At my house, we usually do either a Cab or a Cabernet Franc or a Cape Bordeaux blend. That's sort of the three go-to wines, I would say. And, sometimes right at the end, we even ripped out a port every now and then, or Cape Port, which I call it now. So, those are sort of I would say sort of for the mainstream. Of course, we drink from different countries and all of that, but I would say if you take stock standard, how we operated, we'll start with a little whiter Chenin, then go to a Cab or a Cab Franc or a Cape Bordeaux blend, and sort of, maybe depends on how the evening go, maybe a little bit of port right to the end.
Do you guys, and Peter, you're up next on the wine question, but I want to just throw out there, you're all brilliant winemakers. As you make wine, do you guys have stuff that you just make for yourselves? For your own braais and your own family, it's not in the commercial portfolio, but like stuff that maybe you tuck aside just for your own braais. So maybe Peter, you can lead the way on wine and just keep that in mind.
Yeah, first of all, on what, yes, we always have a sort of some experimental batch that you're playing around with. You want to see how it goes, whether it's a single vineyard or a blend or something, and you make a small amount and you do it for a few years. So you can have an idea of how things are evolving in the bottle. So we always have those around, and they're quite interesting to see. Just on the question of wines and the braai, I agree with, we normally start with a typical thing with the white, but braai is a very casual thing in South Africa, so there are no set rules. You will normally try and pair say you're eating a nice fried piece of yellowtail fish or something with your main meal, then you will try and have a better white wine to pair with that. And the same applies to if it's a red protein, whatever it is. I find Syrah especially goes well with lamb. It's got that spiciness which goes well. But you might select something special for the main meal. But besides that, it's whatever you feel like at the time. So yeah, that's how I do it. I think some other people do it differently. And what often happens when you invite friends over, people bring their own wines too. That's quite typical.
And that's fun too, because then you're out of your comfort zone, right? Like I think we all tend to drink our own stuff or the stuff we love or the stuff we represent. So I'm often thrilled when someone walks in the door with a Greek wine or, something I'm not normally thinking of. It adds another layer of fun. With that, I want to say a huge thanks to the three of you. It is to anyone that has bride on your farms or with you here. It's actually a real honor to talk about wine and braai with you guys. So I want to say thanks for taking the time. And I want to remind everyone, know your producers. Think about the wine you buy. It's an agribusiness category, and we say this every day. Just like you think about getting great grass-fed ground beef, you have to think about where you buy your wine. You have to think about who's the family that made that wine. We're trying to show everybody, know your importer. And whether you love Italian wines, French wines, South African wines, Spanish wines, if it's imported into the U.S., it actually has an import statement. There'll be something on the back of that bottle that says imported by. For our company, it's a little C over a C, and it says Cape Classics. Learn about your importers. Learn about how the wine you buy is made, who imported it, who are the families that make it, because there are lots of special people just like these three gentlemen making gorgeous wine at really fair prices that are still honest wines. I think about wines that our grandparents probably had that are honest, not over manipulated. The fruit is beautiful from step one. So I just encourage everybody, just like you do with your food, spend some time and learn about where you're getting your wine. Find a great retailer, learn the importers. So thanks, guys. Thanks for imparting some knowledge and some passion. I think everyone's going to really enjoy this and go have a great braai. It's actually right about that time for you guys, right? Probably a little bit of work to do still, but you can start thinking about lighting the braai. So thank you for all you do. We really appreciate it.
You can purchase any of the wines discussed today online at wine.com. For 10% off of your order, enter Cape Classics at checkout. For more information on Cape Classics wines, visit capeclassics.com and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Cape Classics. Thank you for listening, and please tune in next time. Until then, cheers.